It's interesting that at a program like this, people almost always bring something if it relates. And Mrs. Dean has brought something that's an interesting artifact, and I'm sorry that you can't see it very well because it's too precious to allow people to pass around. But it is the book that gives the information about the 1894 tour of Barnum and Bailey's Circus. It's on the front, it's aluminum, it's all carved. It has the whole listings of where they went in different years up to 1894, and that was the year that they came to Alma, one of the years. And also in the back is a very fine map showing where they went. So this is a very valuable artifact from almost a century ago, and I thank her for bringing it, and I'm going to ask my son if he will return it to her right now. We have other circus enthusiasts here tonight. I want to recognize them before we begin. Rod Pringle has been a person interested in the circus and a collector of circus things, and naturally, if he has a calliope, you can tell he really loves the circus. Standing next to the pickup is Doug Soule from Breckenridge, who also is interested in circuses, a circus fan and collector, and he has brought these magnificent circus posters, which he found in a barn in St. Louis. But they advertise Barnum and Bailey's trip into Alma, June 5th, 1913. They're really very beautifully done, and you're welcome to look at them after we're finished here tonight. We're going to ask Rod, after I'm through speaking, to also grace us with a little more music. So, ladies and gentlemen, presenting Alma Circus Town, Golmar Brothers, Adam Forepaw and Sells Brothers, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show, John Robinson Circus, Cook Brothers, Al G. Barnes Wild Animal Circus, Walter L. Main, Barnum and Bailey, Hagenbeck and Wallace, Kay Brothers, Sparks Circus, Siles Sterling, Clyde Beatty, Barnett Brothers, Miller Brothers 101 Ranch Wild West Show, Daly Brothers, Ringling Brothers, Great American Allied Show, Museum, and Animal Exposition, the Great New Syndicate Shows in Paris Hippodrome, Pawnee Bill's Historic Wild West and Great Far East Ethnological Congress, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Combined Circus, the greatest show on earth. Magic names, one and all, and they produced 1,000,000 glittering dreams and 1,000,000 glittering memories. And one and all, they played Alma, Michigan, for its size, the greatest circus town in the state. There have been only a handful of years in the last century when a circus has not come to Alma. In some years, more than one circus came to town. So for one or more magical days each summer, year after year, from before daylight, when the circus train pulled in, until the last act completed the evening's performance at 10:30 or later, and the circus train left at 1 a.m. For that one magical day, Alma swarmed with thousands of people eager to immerse themselves in that wonder world of breathtaking pageantry, the circus. The circus experience really began on the day that the advance man came to town in the winter to make arrangements for the location and also to make arrangements for the hay, straw, and grain for the circus animals the following summer. Local men such as City Clerk D.W. Adams made the arrangements with local farmers to see that these needed goods, hay, grain, and straw would be there on the circus grounds on Circus Day. But the circus fever really began to smolder when another advance man showed up a few weeks before Circus Day and went through town pasting up literally hundreds of bright posters announcing the circus's appearance. 2 weeks before the performance, ads appeared in the Alma Record, the local weekly. The word spread quickly beyond the borders of Alma. Farm families began planning to take the day off, and children began losing sleep. In the tradition of the great promoter P.T. Barnum, the posters and ads ballyhooed the circus with claims verging on the seemingly impossible. Could it be possible that in 1908 it took 85 double-length railroad cars to bring Ringling Brothers into town? Were there really 40 elephants and 100 cages of wild animals? And how could an automobile come down a ramp, do a double somersault, land on another ramp on its wheels? But there was the picture of it whirling in the air. And the man who walked not on his hands, but on his head. There he was in the ad, bouncing along on his head, feet in the air. We don't know when the first dog and pony show hit Alma, but we do know that for many years, the circus followed a predictable pattern. After the publicity, Alma citizens needed to wait about 2 weeks for the circus to arrive. Some people bought their tickets ahead of time at a local drugstore. Most waited to get them at the ticket wagon. But the excitement of Circus Day began long before the afternoon's performance. To prepare for this major event, some farm families came into town the night before and stayed with relatives. And some children hardly slept a wink waiting for the whistle of the steam locomotive that would herald the arrival of the first circus train, usually between 3 and 5 a.m. Fathers would get up early, get the kids dressed, take them down to the railroad to view the unloading of the circus paraphernalia. A crowd would be gathered along the tracks in the dimness of early morning as the train pulled in, stopping at the Woodworth Street crossing, or more often at the Superior Street crossing. And then it would begin unloading the wagons, the tents, the elephants that would help raise the big top, and all these, all the tents, the big top, the animal tent, the sideshow tent, food tent, cook tent, an immense amount of other material had to be taken to the circus grounds. In Alma, those circus grounds were located in several places. One spot was the river flats back of the roller mills where the Goody Barn is located. Sometimes the circus occupied an area south of the present location of the community center. Once it used a field behind the present Masonic home at the north end of State Street. The two most frequently used sites were the Udell Farm on Wright Avenue, across Wright Avenue from where the Masonic home is today. And finally, the cavalry grounds at the south end of State Street, or as we would say, down by the armory. As the tents were being erected at the circus grounds, and the circus people were getting their breakfast in their mess tent, hundreds, even thousands of people were arriving in Alma. Ones who lived close enough came by horse and wagon, bicycle, and on foot. In later years, a steady stream of flivvers brought the crowds into town, and parking was at a premium. Two major rail lines crossed in Alma, and trains offered special excursion rates, and they brought circus goers from Vesterburg, Riverdale, Elwell, Shepherd, Forest Hill, Breckenridge, St. Louis, Ithaca. Imagine being an 8-year-old boy from Vesterburg on that day, up early to catch the train, now trundling along toward Alma with your parents and two sisters, slowing down for Riverdale, where more families are going to board, slowing down for Elwell, where more families are going to board. The train whistles, it shrieks at the crossroads, but the train can't go fast enough. And then it starts slowing down for the long curve into Alma. Imagine the straining necks to see the circus train as we go by, all unloaded, and all the excitement that's awaiting. And finally coming to a hissing stop at the depot down near South State Street, and then Imagine having to heed your mother's admonition not to shove and push in the aisle, coming onto the platform, down the steps, into a bright, hot summer day with people everywhere. And the whole thing, the whole town, the whole attitude is calling, "Circus, circus." So with every train, the town swelled with humanity. When Barnum and Bailey appeared in Alma in 1894, the streets downtown were already lined with people at 7 a.m. By 9 a.m., there was a mass of humanity wherever you looked, along all the major streets, up in the windows of buildings, even on top of buildings. Of course, they were awaiting the circus parade, which that year was billed as the grandest street parade ever devised. And they weren't disappointed. The parade was 13 blocks long, and it wended its way toward the circus grounds. Virtually all of the circus people, from star performers to the roustabouts, had more than one job. And they all appeared in the parade. As soon as the tents were up, it was time to get into your circus costume and get on the circus wagons which had been unloaded from the flat cars. The cage wagons with the ferocious animals and the loose marching beasts were ready for the parade, a spectacle that seems to defy words. The parade got underway with a flourish and blast of music from one of the circus bands perched high atop its bandwagon. Some circuses sported as many as 4 different bands. From there on, for an hour, children and adults were held spellbound as the great glittering circus wagons were pulled up State Street or down Superior Street. Every wagon festooned with intricate carved scenes painted and gilded to delight the eye. Some wagons carried bigger-than-life carved figures such as Mother Goose and Cinderella and her prince. The Barnum and Bailey 1894 parade contained, among other attractions, gentlemen fox hunters, mounted of course, a bandwagon drawn by 10 horses, cage wagons containing 5 tigers, 4 lions, 6 leopards, 6 panthers, 6 hyenas, 4 bears, and 6 wolves, all accompanied by their trainers. Mounted ladies and gentlemen, elegantly arrayed, marched proudly by on those splendid horses. Also included were 2 elephants carrying on their backs those beautifully fringed and tasseled howdahs carrying oriental beauties. Following them was a caravan of 12 performing elephants, camels with Asiatic riders, camels harnessed to a dragon chariot, and wagons containing carved figures of Bluebeard the pirate, the old woman who lived in a shoe, Santa Claus, Little Red Riding Hood, and Sinbad the sailor. And that was not all. Just as celebrated as were the wild animal wagons were those containing royalty from around the world. For instance, the Emperor of China was preceded by a standard bearer, and he rode in a white swan chariot with 6 mandarins and officers. He was followed by the crowned heads of Siam, Egypt, Japan, Persia, Turkey, Holland, Belgium, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Austria, Russia, France, Germany, and England. These costumed circus performers rode on elephants or on horseback or in ornate circus wagons, all accompanied by their gaudily clad retinues. And last of this section of the parade came an allegorical chariot of America bearing men of the Army and Navy, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, Uncle Sam, and the Statue of Liberty. By 1904, Barnum and Bailey had added to their parade the gigantic 2 hemispheres bandwagon. It was the largest, heaviest, most ornately carved bandwagon ever constructed. It required a hitch of 40 horses, driven by one man and attended by 2 others. One of those manned the brakes on this huge wagon, and the other assisted the driver, who held 10 reins in each fist. The front horses were 80 feet ahead of the wagon, and they had to make turns. In those days, and that was the day of the horse, this contrivance was an eye-opener indeed, and it rolled through the streets of Alma. Of course, clowns were sprinkled along the route, and in circus tradition, the last item in the parade was the shrieking steam calliope. It was played by a man titled Professor. It smelled of heat, coal, and steam, and it sounded like a very loud pipe organ with a bad cold. When the parade was over, they estimated 18,000 people who had crowded into this town of a few thousand set out to have dinner. Restaurants were packed. Local entrepreneurs had set up food booths throughout the city. Ladies' aid societies and several churches provided food. And many families packed Wright Park, right where you are, with picnic lunches. And mothers were urging kids with no appetite whatsoever to please eat their cold fried chicken. Who could eat cold fried chicken with peanuts and cotton candy calling? Not only was circus food calling, but so were the animal tents and the sideshow tents where the circus exhibited its oddities and freaks. These opened at 1 o'clock, an hour before the afternoon's performance. Often the price of a single ticket got you into any of the tents. And so, let's go to the circus grounds. Families streamed up Wright Avenue to the Udell farm. Yesterday it had been a field, but today a rare and radiant, totally foreign and exotic city had sprung up in that field as if the work of a fantastically clever genie. The sights, the sounds, the smells devilishly assaulted the senses, jerking the eyes this way and that, perking the ears, crisping in the nostrils. Older children were ready to explode with excitement. Younger children cowered in the folds of mother's dress. If you'd not bought your ticket downtown, you lined up at the ticket wagon. At the Great American Allied Show Museum and Animal Exposition in 1884, tickets were 25 cents. For the next 30 years, tickets were customarily 50 cents for adults and 25 cents for children under 12. Not until the 1920 performance of Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey did tickets go up to 75 cents for adults and 50 cents for children. But the prices went down to 40 cents and 25 cents during the Depression when circuses fought to stay alive. By the end of World War II, ticket prices had gone over $1 for adults. But at every circus, some lucky boys earned tickets by helping carry water to the animals and doing other circus chores. With ticket in hand, you entered the circus, another world. Ringling Brothers at Alma in 1908 required 14 acres on which to spread its tents. And Barnum and Bailey in 1913 advertised 20 acres of tents. A trip to the animal tents was really a study in natural science. Ferocious and rare animals from half a world away were almost within arm's reach. Where else could you see and smell giraffes and zebras, polar bears and seals, gorillas and ostriches? The freaks of nature were also to be found. A hairless horse, dwarf cattle, and a steer with 3 eyes, 3 nostrils, and 3 horns. People freaks too were on exhibit, the tallest, the shortest, the fattest, the hairiest, the most deformed. They had not appeared in the street parade, and after the night's performance, they were taken almost surreptitiously back to the circus train in the dark of back streets. At 1:40, the circus band blared forth, heralding the matinee. People streamed into the big top, or white top as it was also known. They were looking for the best seats. The best seats, of course, were those in front of the center ring. And those, of course, were the reserve seats, which cost a quarter more. Ethelyn Adams recalls that her father, D.W., who had worked for the circus as advance man, was rewarded with reserve seats. These sported low folding backs that came up, and they offered a little lumbar support. Cushions could be rented to transform these seats into the poshest seats under the big top. But most people had to settle for bleachers. In the matter of food, Ethelyn had been warned by her mother not to eat ice cream or drink pink lemonade at the circus. It was mixed in a wash tub in the open air, subject to the arrival of anything airborne. But many took the risk, downing circus food without a second thought. At 2 o'clock, the long-awaited performance began with the grand entry, a spectacular parade into the arena and around the hippodrome track. Curtains were pulled aside, and with a brassy flourish, the band stepped out to lead the colorful march of glamorous performers, beautiful horses, blanketed elephants, and crazy clowns around the track. And then, with the piercing whistle of the top-hatted ringmaster, so began the greatest show on earth. And the greatest, most celebrated performers played Alma in the old days. Forepaugh and Sells in 1903 touted the danger-deriding, death-defying, desperate, daredevil Diavolo. He looped the loop on his bicycle. He started high in the air, rode his bicycle down a ramp, went around a loop, much like a modern roller coaster, came out to a skidding halt, and the applause and cheers of the audience. Minting the Marvel rode a unicycle up a very high spiral ramp, which was regarded as quite a remarkable accomplishment. Hayes, the cycle wonder, rode his bicycle around the inside of a vertical cage, going faster and faster and rising to the top, then slowing down to allow himself to come back to the bottom. In 1904, Barnum and Bailey arrived with 2 spectacular bicycle acts, Volo the Volatant and Ancelotti, billed as the modern Ariel, a character from Shakespeare's The Tempest. Volo was also known as Dr. C.B. Clark of Kansas City, Missouri, and he would ride a bicycle down a steep ramp. The ramp at the bottom had a slight curve in it, which launched him about 50 feet through the air, and he landed on another ramp, a receiving ramp. Ancelotti, who was Volo's rival, really, in bicycle tricks, also performed an act similar to Diavolo's Loop the Loop, except this man looped the loop with the top of the loop taken away. So he came down, caught the loop, which threw him up. He sailed upside down through air, caught the other side of the loop, which brought him down, and sailing out to a skidding stop, and once again, the applause of the audience. Now, naturally, the reaction of the audience is predictable in these particular kinds of stunts. Silence as he begins coming down the ramp, 45 degrees. A collective holding of the breath as he goes up and through the air, a release of breath as he hits the loop on the other side, and the cheering as he comes to a stop. Volo the Volatant, in his evening's performance here in Alma, climbed to the top of his ramp, 45 feet in the air. He mounted his bicycle. He said his customary Hail Mary. He started down the 80-foot-long ramp. Perhaps he knew, as he launched off the ramp, that he had misjudged. Riding his bicycle with the front foot at a 45-degree angle. He sailed 56 feet through the air, landed on his receiving ramp too far. The front wheel came down, crumpled. The injured bicycle bucked him off. He flew through the air, landed in an unconscious heap. Now, Dr. Ivers, one of the circus doctors, rushed out along with other circus personnel to examine this man who lay there unconscious. They took the unconscious Volo away to the Alma Sanitarium, which stood over on the other side of the park, examined him to learn of his injuries. They could determine no broken bones, no internal injuries, but a severe shaking up. And he stayed at the Alma Sanitarium for several days, as they said, to recover from the severe shock. Bavolo circus days were numbered. Bicycle acts were on their way out. It was becoming the day of the automobile. Soon automobiles were zooming down the ramps, being launched into space and landing on the receiving ramps on the other side. If this spectacle of the flying auto was not enough, soon the auto was designed to do 2 somersaults in the air before it landed. And all this with a beautiful circus lady strapped in the driver's seat. Audiences cringed at the danger inherent in such a stunt, but Octavie Latour, the lady driver, explained that it was more mechanical and less dangerous than it looked. Under the car were small wheels attached to rails, so the car could not jump off the ramp. The distance between the ramps had been carefully calculated, and between the receiving ramp and the car throwing ramp, and the car receiving ramp was 3 times as wide as the car throwing ramp. Madame Latour explained that real danger would have been going to the moon. Ringling Brothers in 1908 and Forepaugh and Sells in 1911 both launched double somersaulting automobiles. And why not? At that time, Ringling Brothers owned an interest in the Forepaugh Circus. Enough of an interest to kill the famous Forepaugh and Sells Circus at the end of that 1911 season when it appeared in Alma. So the bicycles and the autos flew through the air in Alma. And so did the aerialists, the acrobats, the equestrians. The popularity of the equestrians, the performers on horseback, was immense. It was the age of the horse. People then, more than today, truly appreciated the tricks done by horses and on horses. In fact, Ringling Brothers advertised that they carried 650 horses. Many of these were work horses, but many also were highly trained performers. One of their star horses in 1908 was Riccobono, his wife and family. These horses, costumed as people, walked around on their hind legs, and Riccobono actually went to bed as a climax to his act. In 1913, Barnum and Bailey were back in Alma advertising perhaps the greatest equestrienne of her time, a 17-year-old Australian, Mae Worth. Circus posters billed her as the greatest bareback rider of all time, and no one seemed to challenge that claim. The difficulty of the tricks she did on horseback could only truly be appreciated by other equestrians, and she appeared to do them with ease. Besides the forward somersault, Mae did the double backward somersault, throwing herself against the forward motion of the horse and twisting so that she landed facing forward. Her greatest trick was sensational. She somersaulted backwards from one moving horse to another, somersaulted backwards to a third, and backflipped to the ground. Alma circus goers may have been eager to see Mae Worth in 1913, but before she was to come to Alma, she was badly injured in a circus accident during a performance, and she didn't appear in Alma until 1918 with Ringling Brothers. Still as spectacular as ever, Mae Worth performed on her galloping horses with deceptive ease. She was already guaranteed a prominent spot in circus history. Ringling Brothers had bought Barnum and Bailey back in 1907, but the two shows circulated in different parts of the country for years. World War I and the influenza epidemic of 1918 changed all that. Too many circus people went to fight in the war, and desperately short-handed, these two circuses combined into the greatest circus probably of all time. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's combined circus, the greatest show on earth. Imagine the excitement in Alma in 1920 when this show arrived on July 29th. Mae Worth was there, as was Lillian Lightsoe, queen of the aerial gymnasts, and Alfredo Cadona, king of the flying trapeze. The handsome Cadona was the first aerialist to consistently do a triple backward somersault in the air. Cadona said that when he left the trapeze, he was traveling at 60 miles an hour, and he spun over 3 times completely in the space of 7 square feet. And then he landed in the hands of his catcher, his brother Lalo. And he did it here in Alma. The temperamental Lillian Lightsoe earned $500 a week in a private railroad car. The most impressive part of her act was an acrobatic maneuver called swingovers. Hanging by her right arm from a swiveling ring high in the air, she would start to swing her whole body over her right shoulder. The percussionist in the band would start to play drum rolls, and Lightsoe swung over and over and over and over like an airplane propeller. People started to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. She often got up to 150. In one place, she did 246. But she did this act in Alma. The acrobats, the clowns, elephant acts, the high wire families, the trained wild animals, all part of the greatest show on earth. But other shows played Alma as well, spectacular ones. In 1901, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show arrived in 3 trains at 5 a.m. on the morning of July 5th. It was not billed as a circus, but it had all the excitement of one. Alma was just recovering from the 4th of July, and this even greater attraction arrived. Hundreds of people were at the depot to watch the unloading. An estimated 20,000 people viewed the parade, 15,000 attended the afternoon performance, and 3,000 the evening performance. And what a performance it was. Even the name Buffalo Bill spoke of daring and heroism. Buffalo Bill Cody, Pony Express rider, buffalo shooter, Indian fighter, Western scout and guide. The Western frontier was gone by 1901, but Buffalo Bill wasn't, and he arrived in Alma with his big show. It featured cowboys and Indians, sharpshooting, Pony Express ride, buffalo hunt, and an attack on the Deadwood stagecoach. Naturally, the performance was given in the open air. A tent would have been riddled with bullet holes. Some of those bullets would have been fired from the rifle of Little Miss Sure Shot, Annie Oakley, the most famous markswoman in American history, the Annie of Annie Get Your Gun. She warmed up by blasting glass balls out of the air. Then with a bullet, she extinguished the lighted end of a cigarette in somebody's mouth. She could also hit dimes thrown up in the air, and she could hit the thin edge of a playing card at a distance. The show opened with 400 riders sailing into the arena in full chase. But the most impressive moment was the arrival of the famed Buffalo Bill on horseback. His was an unforgettable figure. Gray goatee, long gray curling hair flying under his Stetson. He wore a fringed deerskin hunting shirt and leggings, and around his waist a belt held ammunition pouches, a hatchet, and a hunting knife. He epitomized the Western hero. And for weeks afterwards, small Alma boys improvised clothing and equipment in idolizing the great Buffalo Bill Cody. By the time Buffalo Bill's Rough Riders had galloped around the arena, Johnny Baker had shown his talents in horsemanship, Annie Oakley had fired her last shot, the wagon train had been attacked by Indians and rescued by soldiers, the stagecoach had been held up, a settler's cabin had been attacked, and the settlers rescued by Buffalo Bill and his cowboys. By that time, Alma people felt they had received their money's worth. Buffalo Bill's success prompted imitators. Gordon W. Lilly, known as Pawnee Bill, brought his Wild West show to Alma in 1905. As a special attraction, it advertised an airship and promised 2 ascensions. Pawnee Bill capitalized not only on the Wild West, but also on the Far East, including Japanese and Russian cavalry and riders from Manchuria. In 1908, a banner year for Alma, Ringling Brothers came in June, and Miller Brothers 101 Ranch Wild West show came in August. It was the first season for the 101 Ranch show, which originated in Oklahoma. Its sharpshooters, bullfighters, horse wranglers, and other performers, the ad said, would reproduce the sports, frolics, games, roundups, gallantries, hardships, perils, combats, adventures, and romantic daily happenings of their lives. Who in Alma could resist that? The circus's evening performance, which usually began at 8, drew a much smaller crowd than the matinee. But it was still the same show. When the last elephant had lumbered out of the ring at 10:30, circus day was nearly over. Like a well-oiled machine, the tents came down, the wagons were loaded onto the flat cars, and by 1 a.m. the trains were on their way out of town. And so they came, year after year. When it wasn't Barnum and Bailey or Ringling Brothers, it was Forepaugh and Sells, or Sells Floto, or John Robinson's famous shows, or Al G. Barnes' Wild Animal Circus. And they were not without their interesting sidelights. The new great syndicate shows in Paris Hippodrome gave a good parade and performance in 1896, but the local paper commented afterward, the show was accompanied by the very worst specimens that ever visited any town, who manipulated the different games and tricks by which the fool and his money were to be soon parted. A gang of pickpockets plied their light-fingered occupation very successfully in the sideshow, and many a one went home poorer by several dollars. The newspaper also reported that Town Marshal Grieg appeared at the circus with 3 warrants for those accused of swindling. He entered the company's railroad cars in search of the men, but to no avail. An angry crowd gathered, exchanging words with the circus people. A circus employee grabbed a sandbag and hit local lawyer John D. Spinney with it. The newspaper said, and for once this legal luminary had nothing to say. Another local man, Wilbur Nelson, was also hit by the bag of sand and was dazed. Next, the prosecuting and the sheriff were called from Ithaca, but they could do little. The prosecutor was afraid to detain the entire circus for fear of a lawsuit against the county. And at last, the circus was persuaded to hand over some of its ill-gotten gains and was allowed to depart from Alma. Rain sometimes complicated getting to and from the Big Top, turning the circus ground into a field of mud. A severe electrical storm canceled the evening performance of Barnett Brothers Circus in 1939. Several times, the Big Top was filled to capacity with Gratiot people, and they spread canvas or straw on the hippodrome track to accommodate the overflow. When it came time for the races, all those people had to get up and move into the rings to get out of the way. In 1918, an estimated 25,000 people were in town for the Ringling Brothers show. In 1920, When Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey arrived, 25,000 people were in Alma, 20,000 attended the afternoon performance, and this 1920 performance drew the largest crowd in Alma circus history. Alma at the time probably had around 7,000 people. When Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey appeared in Alma for the last time in 1925, it was minus a major circus tradition. The automobile had crowded the circus parade off the streets. Still, the Big Top was full that afternoon, and despite 3 hours of rain in the morning, no one was arrested for drunkenness, which was customary because it was prohibition. No one was disorderly, and only minor fender benders were reported among the heavy automobile traffic. It was truly a remarkable day considering the thousands of people who had crowded into this town. The Siles Sterling Circus marched Alma's last circus parade through the streets in 1934. After 1932, most circuses were located at the Cavalry Grounds on South State Street. And while the very biggest circuses no longer played the smaller towns, Alma enjoyed performances by Al G. Barnes, still traveling by railroad in 1935, and Sil Sterling, traveling by truck in the 30s. Circuses struggled during the Depression. Some lived, some died. The coming of World War II also slowed circus activity in the smaller towns. After the war, Alma had its circuses once more. The five-ring Daly Brothers Circus arrived by train on Wednesday, May 25th, 1949. School was not out yet, but children with circus tickets or excuses were excused. Many of you will appreciate the note that Alma High School principal Ward Schultz received that day. It said, "Please excuse my little boy Walter to go to the circus this afternoon." It was signed Fern Wrench. Little boy Walter, of course, was Walt Wrench, her husband, the manual arts teacher at the school. And as you might expect, Walt got to go to the circus with the rest of the little boys. The Clyde Beatty Circus came to Alma in 1951, billed as the world's finest and newest big railroad circus. Beatty, world-renowned animal trainer, battled his ferocious lions and tigers and featured his 600-pound lion, Prince, who was also a tiger killer. In the 50s, Clyde Beatty was Mr. Circus. Circuses still come to Alma and neighboring towns. They aren't big, but their clowns are funny. Their aerialists and wire walkers still take the breath away. Their ponderous elephants do amazing tricks, and the smells of cotton candy and salted peanuts and popcorn still shout out, "Circus, circus." But it isn't quite the same as in the old days when the big ones came to Alma. For one fabulous day each summer, Alma became a magic town. The circus trains carried into this rural village a bizarre collection of animals from beyond the sea. It brought acrobats and daredevil aerialists, performing horses and talented equestrians, animal trainers and roaring beasts, clowns and freaks, a show sparkling like tinsel under the big top, and small children collected memories that would last a lifetime no matter how many circuses they were to attend. That wonderfully bright and shining circus, that take the breath away, heart skip a beat circus that came every summer, that kaleidoscope of marvelous, magical moments here in Alma, Circus Town. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're an excellent audience, and I need to say just a couple things before we dismiss. You can't put together this much information without help. So I specifically want to recognize some people who are probably all dead. The editors of the Alma Record, who put in the circus ads and stories with good details about the circuses. Then some circus enthusiasts who have written some excellent books on the circus, and some people that I asked, did you ever attend a circus here? And Ethelyn Adams told me about when she attended and about how it was to sit there in the reserved seats. And I asked my mother, who's here, what it was like to attend the circus, and she lived almost 20 miles away on a farm, and she and some other children were able to come clear to Alma to attend Barnum and Bailey. And the thing that she remembers most were some spectacular horses, white horses that stood just like statues in all the rings. And she also remembers the fact that she was wearing a little white dress, a precious white dress, and as she walked across the field to the circus grounds, a grasshopper got under there and spit tobacco juice on it. And that sort of spoiled the day for her. I want a show of hands. How many of you, as far as you can recall, have attended a circus in Alma of any kind? Oh, great. I'm going to get touchy now. How many of you attended a circus before 1930? Ooh. Anybody here want to claim 1920? Brave enough? Hey, some hands. Great. I will go no further. Okay, that's great. Some other people who helped. My research assistant, my daughter Megan, spent many hours at the Alma Library watching the new mechanized film, microfilm reader as we just set it going and watched page after page after page after page go by. And as soon as the circus ad came up, we stopped it, and there we were, ready for some new excitement. And so she was very helpful. Also, I thank Rod Pringle and Adam. I thank Doug Souls for bringing these great circus posters. These may be the only old Alma, specifically Alma circus posters in existence. So they're very, very precious, and you're welcome to come up and take a look at them.
Okay, I've been asked to give some information on this instrument behind me, the Calliope that I own. This was built in the 60s, around 1968 in Clearwater, Florida, by a doctor, Dr. Pace. The original machine, all stuff, the original machine now is the cabinet. The whistles I had redone, they were organ pipes. I bought this from a lady in St. Louis, had it in her basement, Mrs. Dolores Comstock, and she had brought it up from Florida and used it in parades for a while. And I saw it advertised, and so we made arrangements to purchase it. I did the complete keyboard over, the blowers. Gave it a lot more volume than what it had. It was nice for indoors the way it was, but I like it for parades and for outside performing. It takes about 100 cubic feet per minute of air to run through those pipes. And if you want, I'll play you a song on it so you can get an idea what it sounds like. There you have it.
Edited by Lynn Moody and Ben Johnson. This has been a presentation of Alma Public Access Studio, TV3.